When I looked at President Trump, then a candidate back in 2016 and 15, um, initially I felt like Clinton was a better candidate. And I said so. And I gave some reasons why. But then, as I was doing more research about it, I decided that Clinton was a bad bet for the nation and potentially worse than Trump. In the end, I felt that neither of them were any good. Now, that may sound kind of strange, but let me explain a little bit. So, when I looked at Trump, I could see that there was something about his personality that was off. There was something about the way he presented himself that rang alarm bells for me. And so that combined with statements like from his former biographer, who did that book about how amazing he was as a salesperson, was definitely a factor that influenced my opinion of Trump initially, because it indicated that Trump was a man with a serious character flaw, at least one, which was that he was very selfish and also very manipulative. But when I started looking into Hillary Clinton, I mean, I knew about the debacle with Bill and his screwing around with other women, which the fact that he had been doing it for a long, long time, and it was absolutely unquestionable that Hillary knew about it and still stuck with her husband. Now, you could say, oh, she's just a traditional woman. She's not going to leave her man even though he's sleeping around. I don't think that that is the case. I think that there are other reasons. Just like Melania stays with Trump, and it's clear that they are not in love. I mean, the optics that we get when they are in public demonstrate that very clearly. And oftentimes it demonstrates that there is a great deal of distance between them, and it's more of a business relationship than anything else. And that may be the case with Hillary and Bill. Who, by the way, have you noticed in recent years, his nose is getting really red like an Irishman, like he's been drinking too much? Anyways, but there were other things like alliances that the Clintons had formed with dubious people who have a bad history. And that made me very concerned. I wasn't so much concerned about the whole email server thing. It was a stupid thing to do, but I thought that there were worse things, like when she and the DNC baked the primaries so that Bernie Sanders wouldn't win. I thought that was much more important and much more telling of the kind of ethics that she represents. And recently, early this year, I read a book written by a man who was heavily involved in politics for many years and supposedly had covered up some things that the Clintons had done and had been involved in some business dealings in which Hillary was ripping him off, and yet he just kind of took it on the chin. And it just, I can't put full faith in that book. The man who wrote it is now deceased, but I feel like he was trying to write that book to make himself look like the hero / victim and diminish to a great degree his culpability in the illegal activities that he engaged with the Clintons in. So I take it with a cup of salt, because it was questionable. But this is now. But I'm talking about back then. So there were things that made me very concerned about Hillary becoming president. I wanted a female president, but I only wanted her if she was going to be a president we could trust. Because in my life, it seems like every president we've had has caused scandals, has done things that were bad. I mean, Obama, he allowed waterboarding, which is torture. You know, the whole thing of having black sites where people could be tortured outside of laws of America, outside of international jurisdiction, that really bothered me. And the fact that Obama wouldn't give that up really bothered me a lot about him, and it said something about his lack of character. You know, he presents himself as having a great deal of character, but the kind of character I'm looking for is upstanding people who will make the right decisions even when it's difficult. And so then I shifted back to looking at Trump. And as I looked more into his character, I discovered that here was a man who had sunk businesses that should have been unsinkable. He had ripped off people. He had engaged in racist behavior and statements, and was involving himself with people like Roy Cohn, who was, or Roy Cohn maybe, who was a lawyer whose philosophy was, if you get caught, lie. If you are asked about it, lie. And just keep on lying. And even when you are convicted of a crime, continue to lie. Never, ever, ever admit the truth. And he actually was an early mentor of Trump when he was quite young. So the more I looked at him, the more I realized that he was also a serious threat for the country. And although I didn't know about it at the time, I later found out about his Schedule F, which is disastrous. Anytime that you take a government and you pad it with yes men and yes women, people who are going to do whatever you tell them to do, even though that is outside of their job description and outside the job description of the president, to micromanage the entire executive branch, much less any other branch of the government, that indicates a serious problem, because that is, by itself, it's just about the person's ego. But there can be other indicators that show that it's an attempt to take over and have unnatural control of the government in ways that the founding fathers did not want to have happen. And so when I found out about that, I was like really concerned, but that was during Biden's term. Now, let me be clear. I didn't like Biden. Okay? He did some good things. He did some bad things, such as supporting Israel. He shouldn't have supported Israel. He should have let them stew in their own juices. That's what they deserve, because of the horrible genocidal behavior that they have flagrantly demonstrated since before I was born. But I felt like Biden is, and I still feel that Biden is somebody who should have been prosecuted for some of the things that he did. Same with Obama, same with Trump, same with Bush, same with the other Bush, although he was one of the better ones. Same with Clinton, same with Reagan. You know, I wish I could say that we've had several good presidents. We've had several good presidents who've done good things, but also have done bad things. And we've had some presidents who did more bad things than good things, such as Ronald Reagan. Now, when I heard that Trump was bowing down to the evangelical Christians and moving the embassy into, I think it was Jerusalem or Bethlehem, I forget where it was they were moving it to, and he had it moved, which caused tension in the region where it was moved, because it upset the people who lived there who were not Christian, if I understand correctly. Now, I didn't delve deeply into that. I just kind of looked at that very briefly, but it concerned me because it showed a lack of sensitivity to world politics, to regional stability. It demonstrated to me also that he was not going to walk the line of church versus state. And this bothered me because when he was interviewed and the reporter, she asked him, which party would you run under? And he said, well, I've been a Democrat for years, but I would probably run as a Republican. I could practically see the smoke coming out of his ears and the gears turning. And the reason I say that is because there would be, if you were a lifelong Democrat and you're going to flip parties just to run for president, that, number one, demonstrates a man who is more interested in sticking by their morals than by, is less interested in sticking by their morals than by winning. Now, for myself, I'm a very moral person. I've made mistakes in the past, and I've tried to improve myself to follow what I actually believe. I believe it's very important that if you have core values, that you follow them, because if you don't, it creates a lot of mental anguish because you know you're doing wrong. Well, you feel you're doing wrong because your core values are screaming at you, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, you don't do that. And so you feel guilt. And that eats up at you, and you hate yourself, and then you can become very unpleasant toward other people because you're projecting your self-hatred onto them and taking it out on them. And that's really bad. So, and it also was possible that he didn't have core values, and that was why it was so easy for him to flip parties. You look at RFK Jr., he clearly does not have strong core values, except for winning and getting money, which he has demonstrated again and again and again by being willing to lie about things that are demonstrably false, that are easily disproven, which people have done, actually. I recently watched a video in which somebody just totally trashed his lies about all kinds of things that he has been claiming in the medical sphere. He's a lawyer and a politician, not a doctor. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't care. He is causing deaths. He has caused deaths in Samoa because he lied to them. He has caused deaths around America because of measles and other diseases that are preventable with vaccinations. And there is no more thimerosal. There hasn't been since 2001, which is a form of mercury in vaccinations. That was removed in 2001. And autism didn't decrease. So, what I saw from that was, here is a man who was either very weak morally and or he was willing to set aside his beliefs to win. And if you are a man who's following Roy Cohn's instructions, which he was, that demonstrates that your core values are either corrupted or very, very weak. Or you don't have a conscience. And in more recent years, he got involved with another person who's a lot like Roy Cohn, whose name is Roger Stone. Roger Stone also lives by the philosophy of lie, 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 and never tell the truth. Back in, when the first time happened, I was not happy that he had been elected because I don't believe in the lesser of two evils. If two devils come to you and say, one of us is going to torture you, which one do you want? And one of them acts kind of nice and the other one is really scary and stuff. And you choose the one who's nice because you think, oh, he's nice now, he's going to be nice when he's torturing me? No, you're an idiot. He's going to be the same as the other demon. Maybe even worse, because he was tricking you into thinking he was better. So when you're choosing between two candidates and you think, I don't really like either of them, but I don't have any other choices, well, that's BS when it comes to presidents. There are always other choices. And you can always refuse to vote. Now, in the case of the demons, and you're in hell, which I don't believe in, you don't have another choice. You know, if you refuse, they're still gonna make you give you something. So when Trump when Trump at the end of his term allowed the January 6th insurrection, I was not surprised. I would like to say I was surprised. I wish I could say I didn't expect that from him, but I'm not surprised because it was clear to me that he didn't really. Here's a man who they had to repeatedly use his name in security briefs because his attention would wander. And here's a man who one time when there were protesters outside the White House, he asked one of his chief military people if they could just be shot. And the answer, of course, was no. Here's a man who doesn't care about the laws. I mean, he rigged the Supreme Court with justices who lied under oath to the Congress about their position on the presidential power and so many other things. And he has been heavily involved with Project 2025. So, but at that time, I didn't know that he had been involved with 2025, but I knew about other things, and I knew that this was really bad news, that this man had chosen to sit there for so many hours and not bring in the National Guard, not bring in the military, not bring, essentially, if he had acted promptly as he should have when he first heard that things were getting ugly, that they were breaking into the building, that woman who got shot by a police officer would not have been shot. She would still be alive today. And those officers who died in the ensuing days after that, due to injuries or suicide, they would still be alive too. All those people were put into a horrible situation that was fomented by Trump and Alex Jones and Roger Stone and all of these others who were egging them on, but especially Trump. He made statements, yes, where he said, we're peacefully, but later on he said something to the effect of, do it whatever it takes. We've got to win. And he told Pence to falsify the results of the election. And he put out all kinds of lies about the election being stolen, even when many people who were trying to do their jobs right told him he had lost. The people who told him what he wanted to hear, they were the ones he listened to because he didn't want to lose. Trump doesn't like losing. It's against his nature to lose. I mean, that's why if you watch videos of him golfing, and I just saw one earlier last week, where his caddy is walking and he drops a ball to help Trump. And I've heard allegations about that, but that was the first time I'd actually seen it. A man who's willing to cheat at something as inconsequential as golf has a very fragile ego and hasn't got morals. It's just that simple. Here's a man who used his influence with the leader of Scotland to take over a wetland preserve to make a golf course. And there was one family that lived nearby, and the source of water that they relied on for all of their water needs went through the golf course. And they were told, oh yeah, don't worry, we're going to make sure you have your water source. And this is an old couple. I mean, really old. What did they do? They ignored him. They did not give him they did not do what was necessary to make sure the water continued to flow to his home. So sometimes he and his wife had to walk to the nearest water source. Now again, these are old people, probably in their 70s, to get water. And then they had to walk it back, sometimes using a wheelbarrow. And They made a big stink about it eventually, and Eric kept on saying, "Oh, we're going to take care of it. Don't worry, we'll do it. We'll do it when we have time. We're just busy. We do blah 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 blah." Excuses, BS excuses, and they didn't do it, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it for years, and finally, the farmer, he said something to Eric. Eric's a dick, just like his dad. Eric said something like, if you can get that tractor running, because there was an old tractor that had been defunct for many years in his field. If you can get that tractor running, blah, 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 blah. Well, the farmer was very handy with tools and understood how to fix machines. He fixed that tractor, and Eric reneged on his promise. So what did he do with his tractor? He used that tractor to do what Eric and Donald refused to do. He fixed the waterway so he now has water going to his home. What kind of a person does that? Somebody who doesn't care. Somebody who was raised by a slumlord. Somebody who was and is a slumlord. Somebody who has no ethics. But let's put that aside. Let's just say that's a fluke. Let's just say it's a series of misunderstandings, and he forgot. Eric forgot. He's terrible at keeping his calendar, and he forgot that he made that promise. Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt, even though he doesn't deserve it. Now, a lot of people were upset with Trump when he made that comment about, if she weren't my daughter, I'd date her. That one didn't really bother me, because one thing I've noticed about Trump is he doesn't really filter what's in his head. He just lets things come out, and he doesn't care, because he knows the media will pick it up and it's going to give him more attention. And he understands that humans, on average, are not very good at remembering good and bad things. So it gets mixed up in your head after a while. So you start believing in the Berenstain, whatever the wrong name is for the bears, the Berenstain Bears. I think people start mixing things up. They get confused about Nelson Mandela and all those other things that people have reported on that happen. It's true. It does happen. So he understands that. He's very manipulative. Oftentimes, the best salespeople are the ones who are the least trustworthy. And it's because they are willing to cross any line to get the most sales. Now, I'm sure there might be exceptions to that rule, but in my life, what I've observed is the people who BS you the most are the ones who will make the most money. And the people who are the richest in the world didn't get there by being nice and by following laws. They got there by breaking laws and hurting people, sometimes even killing them, sometimes killing a lot of people. So when I watch Trump, I've had bad experiences with scammers. Sometimes I've walked away unscathed. Sometimes, more often than not, I had lost something. Right? Amazon, they scammed me. I'm still unemployed. And I'm struggling mentally. It's been very hard for me. Because in this country where justice is supposed to be so important, I can't get a lawyer to represent me. And I'm afraid I'm going to lose my house. Well, not house, my apartment. So, but when I watched Trump, I was paying attention to the way he behaved. His gestures and his facial expressions and the kind of jokes that he would use and how he presented himself. I noticed, for example, that he was always very certain well, not always. He was mostly very certain in the things he would say on the campaign trail. Now, I have seen clips of him when he was president the first time where he showed uncertainty. Like he was talking about a particular medicine or something like that, and he referred to somebody else off screen, maybe it was Fauci, asking in a questioning way, saying, maybe this is possible, and that got distorted by the media. But I don't want to misrepresent that. He actually showed that he was not certain, but it was represented in the media as him advocating. Now, unfortunately, there are many people out there, because the quality of education in America has become so poor, and so many people just have given up on their education, that the average person has an educational level of 6th grade, even though they went all the way through high school. Their level of understanding is stuck at 6th grade, which makes them very vulnerable to anybody who wants to screw with them. And that's bad. So, on the campaign trail, both times, what I saw was a man who showed a lot of certainty. And that's a red flag. The reason I say that that's a red flag is because at the very least, he's being hyperbolic, which is to say he's exaggerating. But if it's pretty much constant, I know what I'm talking about, everybody else is wrong, I'm the smartest man in the world, all that kind of stuff, that is a very dangerous indicator that this is somebody you cannot trust. I know this from experience, from dealing with scammers. And learning about scammers, learning about psychology, learning about the history of people who have scammed. They always present themselves in certain ways. And he ticked that box. And sometimes, he was using love. I'm the only one who cares about you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure you're okay, and all that kind of stuff. Every politician says that. So that by itself didn't really mean much. But then there was also the problem of he was always acting, well, not always, sorry. He often acted like the victim. He would blame the government, he would blame the media, and he would not take responsibility for his own mistakes. And that really concerns me, because you don't get to be a billionaire and survive as long as you have, like Donald, if that is true. It's not possible. Because if the government is really out to get you, they're going to get you. Which is why, Musk is still walking free, which is why Bezos is still walking free, which is why Zuckerberg is still walking free, and so on and so forth. They're walking free because they're a target that attracts attention, but the government needs them. So the government really won't do anything significant to them. They're protected. The rich in this country are protected. They always have been. From the very beginning. So the fact that he was constantly denying responsibility and pushing it off on the government and media and stuff was a massive red flag. Because when you don't take responsibility for your mistakes, that is a huge character flaw. That means that you will continue to do the same wrong or immoral things over and over and over again, and will never accept that you're doing anything wrong. That is a horrible characteristic to have in a president, or any kind of leader for that matter. And the fact that he was blaming the media concerned me greatly, because, okay, on the one hand, I don't argue that the media is biased. It's absolutely biased. But if you pay attention, it can help you to learn. And now with companies like Ground News and Straight Arrow News, you can, and even if you look at the source of most of the reports from Reuters and AP, you can still get a sense of what's going on. If you look at 3 different newspapers, for example, conservative, liberal, and moderate, by the time you're done, you'll probably have a good understanding of the issues. But if you're only listening to one side, like you're only listening to Fox, for example, you're screwed. You're not going to understand what's going on. you're going to understand what they want you to believe. And it may not even be the truth. In fact, that's often the case. It doesn't matter whether it's Republican leaning or Democratic leaning. And even so, so with ground news and with straight arrow news, you have an opportunity to look at a source that will provide you with a better understanding. And it will actually teach you how you're being manipulated by headlines and statements and stuff like that. Now, I'm not sponsored by either of them. Who's going to sponsor me? I haven't even got 600 subs and very few views. So, no, I'm not sponsored. I just think that it's a good resource. So, the idea that Trump is blasting the media and blasting science, and blasting government. So and let's not forget the doctors and the CDC and the WHO and the UN and all these other organizations that he refuses to have anything to do with. So what is he doing? Well, to me, it's really obvious, but maybe to other people, it's not obvious. When you see somebody in a position of influence attempting to convince the population that everything that they have believed in is a lie and the person is going to give them the truth, that is a power grab. Plain and simple. That's all it is. He is trying to take control. He doesn't want you to listen to the scientists and the doctors and the nutritionists and stuff like that. He doesn't want you to listen to any source that can contradict what he wants you to believe, which is why he brings in crazy people like RFK Jr. and all of these Noam and Bondi and Hegseth and all of these other crazy people who are so immoral that if you just look into their backgrounds, you would be shocked. And he brings in people who will do what he says and who will always say good things about him. Because if you hear it from just Trump, that's not enough. But if you hear it from everybody around Trump, oh, he's a great guy, he knows what he's doing, then you start to believe it. Because one voice doesn't mean much. But when a lot of voices are saying the same thing, well, it must be true. No. Not when the deck has been rigged. His administration is a deck of cards, and they're all aces for Trump. So, the fact that he was putting down all of these institutions, and there's, the clever thing about doing that is there's always a grain of truth in the accusation that you make. Now, if we were in, say, Russia, and he made those statements against Putin, it would be way more than a grain of truth, and then he would be assassinated. But the things they were saying about the scientists, and the things the influencers say about the scientists, I have a better than average understanding of science and medicine. And I'm telling you right now, the influencers and Trump and RFK are full of it. So I saw that and it made me very, very concerned because it's undermining the foundational supports of our society to replace them with what Trump wants, which is what Putin did, which is what Stalin did, which is what Hitler did, which is what Mao did, which is what Pol Pot did, which is what so many unethical leaders have done. They strip away all the sources of truth and replace them with what they want. So vaccinations, which have saved billions of lives, it's being undermined. And people are dying because they're no longer getting vaccinations. That's just one example. I could go on and on and on. But let's go on to another example of how I knew that Trump is not to be trusted. When you look at the inauguration, at the inauguration, were many of the country's richest men and women. And many of them are known to be unethical. Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, and so on. They were known to break the law. I've worked for Amazon, and I can guarantee you that from up on high in his little chair in the board of directors, he's still telling them, break the law. And it continues to happen. I still talk to people that work at Amazon, and that hasn't changed. It isn't going to change. So the fact that many of the country's richest men were at his inauguration, men and women who have demonstrated a flagrant disregard for the law, as has Trump, who has 91 convictions and 2 impeachments, was a screaming red flag. And you know, when I saw Musk doing the salute thing, I thought, that doesn't, he said from my heart, he's giving the audience his love. And I defended that because I didn't know any better. And I got a lot of crap for it. I got a lot of crap from the right. Or no, sorry, the left. And finally, somebody, amongst all those people who were denigrating me, without providing any evidence, just being rude, being the typical ignorant fucks that, they are, finally, 1 or 2 of them actually gave me enough information to allow me to research why people were saying I was wrong. Because all those other people had not done that. And so I found videos where I saw neo-Nazis saluting in the exact same way. So then I was like, uh-oh, I screwed up. I can't defend Musk anymore because he's clearly involved with that horrible philosophy, that criminal behavior. And so I turned around. And then the people on the right were yelling at me. It's like, I can't win for losing. Also, just like the influencers who are making themselves rich off of your ignorance of the truth about science and medicine by selling supplements that don't do anything for you or may even sometimes hurt you, I saw that Trump was predicting what he was going to do and blaming it on the opposition parties, especially the Democrats. He repeatedly and continues to tell you what he's going to do, but he pins it on the opposition. So when he talked about rigging the election, he was telling you he was going to. See, this is, there's a psychological need in people who lie. Number one, not just psychological, but to also admit what they're doing. But doing it, generally speaking, they'll do it in a way that either makes them look innocent-ish or deflects responsibility to another person or group of people. That's what they do. I went to university with a guy who was a pathological liar. Good God, the stories he told. Now, I don't believe that Trump is a pathological liar because pathological liars will spin the most ridiculous stories. I don't see Trump doing that. I see him making very calculated lies and spreading them. Like Springfield, Ohio. Even after it was debunked by members of the local government and even Governor DeWine of Ohio, Trump and Vance continued to spread that lie. Why? It served their agenda of anti-immigration. They wanted people to be angry at the immigrants so it'd be easier for them to use ICE and expand ICE to get rid of everybody that Trump as a racist hates. When confronted about Project 2025, Trump said he knew nothing about it. And yet, there are videos of him speaking in front of the Heritage Foundation that made Project 2025. And there are many people who have authored parts of Project 2025 or work in or with the Heritage Foundation who are part of his first administration, and some of them are part of his second administration, like Ross Vogt, I think his name is, whatever his last name is, Vogt. And in addition, some undercover reporters interviewed a member of the cabal of the Heritage Foundation that were involved with Project 2025. And the man admitted, as they recorded, and you can go look for it yourself, that Trump was intimately involved and in total agreement. Now, do I think Trump actually cares about Project 2025? Well, yes and no. You see, the Heritage Foundation presents itself as a Christian foundation. However, I saw a documentary in which former members, lower ranking people, or people who worked there, said that the Heritage Foundation had been usurped by the elite, by really rich people whose goals were totally different from what the Christians wanted. And so it has become just one more way for the rich people to take control of the government, which is what they want.
Thanks for watching. I need to ask for your help. On December 11th, 2024, Amazon fired me under false pretenses. And the 17th, I had surgery for the injury that occurred at Amazon that Amazon and Sedgwick refused to take responsibility for. So it's coming out of my pocket and my insurance company's pocket. That means I'm unemployed and I will not be getting short-term disability from Amazon or from Sedgwick. So my financial situation is a bit of a problem right now. If you would like to help me, there are some things you can do. Number one, you can like, subscribe, share, comment, and turn on notifications on my channels. Number two, if you'd like to give a one-time donation, and please don't do this if you can't afford it, you can, on the Glenn's Fast Reviews channel, do a super thanks. Number three, if you would like to help me on a monthly basis, you can become a member on Glenn's Fast Reviews, or you can go to patreon.com/GLENNMII and become a member there. Thank you so much for your support.
Now, I'm not saying all rich people, but the people who never know when to say enough is enough, that never can accept that they have enough money, that they have enough property, that they have enough power. These like those people, the people I've been naming, these are people who have a psychosis that prevents them from knowing when to stop. So this documentary lays out the changes that had happened, and and these people left because it wasn't something they agreed with. So Trump, as one of those people who was psychotic to the point of not knowing when enough is enough, or not caring when enough is more accurate. In that respect, he's in total alignment with Project 2025 because he knows it's going to make him richer. As long as he toes the line with his array of followers, at least to an extent. Now, as far as the Christian stuff, now, Trump has recently come out as being non-denominational, whereas before he was something else in terms of Christianity. And to me, that's just it's either a dodge to help make it harder for people to nail him down about his supposed Christian beliefs, or it is a tool that he is using to try and rope in even more Christians to following him. And there are some Christians that believe he's a prophet, which is just stupid. Because a man who would walk into the dressing room of the Teen America pageant when girls, not even women, girls were in various states of undress. And he used his role as the owner as an excuse to see minors naked when there is I heard an audio recording from somebody who's intimately involved with that pageant and said there's never been another owner who has ever done that, and it's not okay. And here's the guy who says, grab him by the pussy. And later he was involved with Miss America or something like that, and he did the same thing. He's not supposed to be doing that. That's totally unethical. How would you feel, parents who have girls, how would you feel if this man, knowing he had a close association, a very close association with Epstein, walked into your daughter's locker room while she and all of her friends were in various states of nakedness? How would you feel if a teacher did that, a male teacher? Would you be okay with that? Because if you're not okay with that, then you shouldn't be okay with the president doing that, even if it's a different venue. So there are so many things, and I'm trying to remember them all, but it is so concerning to me because one of the reasons I know he chose the Republicans is the Republicans have always been, in my lifetime anyways, more united. Now, there are different factions. After I think it was Carter, a lot of the racists that were in the liberal side, the Democratic Party, started to move over to the Republican Party because they were pissed off. They felt they were being marginalized, which is good. They should be marginalized. They shouldn't be given a voice in government because it's a hate group. They don't deserve a voice. So over the years, the Republican Party has become more and more vicious and full of hate. And you can see that in the way they talk on the campaign trail. They're very divisive. Look what Georgie Bush talked about and how he divided the nation and how Trump divided the nation. And I'm not saying that the Democrats didn't do that, but I'm not talking about the Democrats. I'm talking about the Republicans and why Trump chose them. So that's irrelevant, really. Okay? You can say what you like about them, and that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you about it. But the fact of the matter is, the Republican Party has many white supremacists in it. It has many Christian nationalists. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Christian nationalist is, these are people who believe that America was supposed to have been and must become a Christian nation exclusively. No more pluralism in religion. And some of them also believe that anybody who lives in America who is not a Christian must follow the Christian laws. And if they don't want to, they should be kicked out of the country. And some of them believe in killing non-Christians who refuse to follow the Christian rules. Very un-Christian-like attitude. I think you'll agree if you understand Christianity. I do fairly well. My grandfather was a minister. My uncle was a minister. My family, most of my family members have been trapped within the cult of Christianity. Well, I'm sorry. My apologies. That's my personal opinion. If you don't agree, that's fine. So there are also the Christian evangelicals who are very fundamentalist, very rigid, very intolerant. So they're not as dangerous as the Christian nationalists, but they are dangerous. And several members of Trump's cabinet are Christian nationalists. And Mike Johnson, the head of the House of Congress, is a Christian nationalist. Now he talks nice, but you don't want to be on his bad side. Because once he gets the power, he is going to become a raging power monster. And there are other groups that are part of the Republican coalition that don't actually mesh very well with each other. But they're not paying attention to each other, really. They're more focused on what their leaders are saying. And if the leaders are giving a message that resonates with all of these different groups within the Republican Party, that the person who does the best job of putting out that message will be the one who wins. And so, since you've got so many radical people, so many people who are intolerant, so many people who have very exclusive agendas that have agendas that exclude many people in America, both foreigners and native-born, it's not hard to tick all the boxes. That's why when you watched all of these candidates going up against Trump, many of them were using very vitriolic rhetoric, just like Trump. Just hate-filled speeches. And speeches pulling people in to feel included, to feel accepted by the candidates. It's a cult trick. I mean, if you study cults, this kind of behavior, this back and forth thing, that is a common you versus me kind of thing that they teach their followers, that they indoctrinate into them. And they prey on the weaknesses of people. So in this day and age where data brokers are legally, unfortunately, because Congress won't do anything about it, they never will, data brokers know more about you than you do. And if the right company gets that information, they can advise a candidate on how to manipulate everybody in the party simultaneously by addressing fears and hopes. And that's what Trump did so well. He got people scared. He got people angry. He got people excited. He got people feeling like, oh, I'm part of a great big family. That's what gangs do too. Gangs make you feel like you're safe. You're in a party. You're in a group of people who will help each other. But Trump didn't have that agenda in his heart. It was just on his lips. There's so much more. So much more that I could tell you. For example, Trump has repeatedly defied courts who have ruled against him. And when he doesn't get the correct or the answer he wants from one court, he'll either go to the higher court or he'll jump right to the Supreme Court. And since the Supreme Court is stacked against any chance of protecting our country anymore by 6 traitors, he gets what he wants sooner or later. Now, the Supreme Court has made a show of resisting him, but it's just for show. It's just to make the people feel like, oh, there's hope. But there isn't hope. The Supreme Court has only got 3 people who care about our nation, genuinely care about all of us. The others, most of them, except for maybe Amy Coney Barrett, or whatever her name is, care about their masters, the people who are paying them. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about Chief Justice Roberts, or we're talking about Kavanaugh, or Gorsuch, let alone Alito and Thomas. They are bought, and they don't care about us. They care about what the elites want. And they have demonstrated that by not doing the right thing and not kicking people out who are violating the mandate of good behavior. It was very stupid of the founding fathers not to put restrictions on and put specific rules on how to determine if a justice needs to be kicked out. It's very, very stupid. I to this day, I haven't figured out why they were so stupid. It's almost like they got tired. They did the president, they did the Congress, and then they're like, oh, we're so tired. let's just wrap this up really quickly and go have a pizza. Trump has violated laws regarding where to deport people. There are actually laws that define where you deport somebody to. It's either the country that they hail from, the last country they were in before they came to the United States, and if neither of those countries are willing to take them, then, and only then, can they be sent somewhere else. But Trump isn't doing that. Additionally, the Alien and Enemies Act says that you have to be given a fair trial. You have to be given the opportunity to beg the president for forgiveness or whatever it's called, an exception. You have to be given advance warning. Now, I understand some people are going to run, so they're like, we can't let them run, so we're just going to catch them right now. I get that idea, but still, it's in the law that he is using to do this. So, most of the things that are in the Alien Enemies Act, he has violated repeatedly. And he has deported people to countries with, that where he didn't bother to check with their native country or their last country of residence or whatever it is before he deported them to a third country. And he's deporting them to places that are dangerous, like the Sikhat torture prison in El Salvador and South Sudan, where there's lots of horrible things happening there. I feel bad for the people in South Sudan and other countries that are being paid to take them. Now, he has also stripped away many of the things that have kept the middle and lower classes from falling into abject poverty. He has done serious damage to the networks, the nets, I guess would be a better word, that provide support. He has damaged support for veterans. He's damaged support for farmers. He's damaged support for the people who are living poor. He has, there are nonprofit organizations that have had to shut down because they can't get any funding now to run their operations, to do the good work that they've been doing. And all the good things that America used to do in other countries have almost all been shut down because U.S. aid was one of his prime targets. Now, you would think, since he was talking about reducing the deficit and reducing prices, that by now we would see something. Gas prices are going up. Grocery prices continue to go up. The tariffs, and he didn't do anything to protect us from the consequences of the tariffs. There are companies like along the border with Mexico, along the border with Canada, that relied heavily on tourism and or on trade, and they're going out of business. There are companies in many other parts of the world, of the country, where because of the tariffs, they're going out of business too, because they can't afford to sell their products anymore in the United States, and it's the only place they sell. So unless they can pivot to selling to foreign nations only and have their products made overseas, or exclusively have their products made in America, which is going to make them very expensive, and sold in America and exported, they go out of business. It has caused absolute chaos, and it will continue to do so, because tariffs historically have been proven to be a very damaging thing to do. People have lost their jobs because of the tariffs, because companies have had to downsize. So he's taken away the support systems that help people who need help. Now, granted, there is an argument for removing subsidies, but there are a lot of companies that give subsidies that don't need subsidies, like the logging industry, like the mining industry. They don't deserve it, and they're getting it anyways, and Trump didn't do anything to their subsidies. Whereas the farmers are getting screwed, because many of those farmers, they don't earn enough from their crops to actually have enough money for medical care and everything they need. So a lot of farmers work a second job. I mean, imagine how hard it is to be a farmer and have to work a second job. You're already spending most of your days working for large portions of the year, especially in the South. And the South is where there are a lot of Republicans. So he actually hurt many of the people in his own MAGA group and the larger support group. And then when people protest against something that Trump does, like this Epstein nonsense, and I say it's nonsense, not because I dismiss it like Trump is, the seriousness of the situation and how everything has been covered up and all the rich people that were involved have been protected. I'm talking about his behavior, his trying to dismiss it. He made statements that show, although before the presidency, he was like, oh, I'll release all the files. Oh, and now, what? You're still talking about Epstein, that creep? That was a long time ago. Yeah, 2019 was when Epstein died in prison because he was murdered. And he's going to have Bondi, I think it is, release the grand jury files. The grand jury files won't have anything relevant. And he has had somebody redact some of the files to remove his name because Bondi told him that his name is in the files. And so there are people who are on his side who are very angry. And his response, if he was a mature individual who cared about his followers, and he demonstrated on the campaign trail that he doesn't, he made comments to his followers like, I don't care about you, I just want your vote kind of thing. Because he was hot, he was sweating. It was a very hot day. Instead of saying, I understand your concern, I'm going to make it right with you, he said, I don't need you anymore. If you're not going to support me the way I want you to support me, I'm taking my marbles and I'm going home. You're not my friends anymore. He just abandoned an entire group of people who want answers about Epstein. And Trump will never give answers about Epstein. Why? Well, if you look at it, it's kind of obvious. He had been neighbors with Epstein for many years. They partied together. They scoped out young girls together. There's one woman who back in the day, she reported, and she was documented by at least one news outlet, that she had been assaulted by Trump in front of Epstein and then yelled at by Epstein for not stopping Trump when she was young. She was in front of these two very powerful men. They're both pretending nothing's happening, just carrying on a normal conversation while Trump is supposedly groping her, and nothing happened. And then every time Epstein got caught, he either got a reduced sentence or no sentence at all. And when he was imprisoned the last time, during the day, he was allowed to go to work. He was only in prison at night. And when he was out, he was still molesting girls. And reports to the police went unanswered, ignored, or blown off. He was being protected very, very heavily, including by Trump. And here's the way I know this. Okay? When he was finally being tried as a sex offender, guess what? And I'm gonna say right now, I believe, this is my opinion, I believe the same thing that happened to protect Epstein happened to protect P. Diddy. Sean Combs is too powerfully connected to actually be properly prosecuted and convicted. So he will go back to manipulating and using women and beating women. And maybe someday he'll get his just desserts, but probably not. So Epstein is being tried, and this is the background of how he got to be able to go to work during the day, and so on and so forth. He was definitely protected by multiple people, including Trump. And we know this because in the jurisdiction where he was being tried, there was initially an investigation that was going well, and then illegal things were done to kind of sweep it aside and reduce the importance of it in the eyes of the public. And finally, he got this very reduced slap on the hand. I think it was 9 months or something crazy like that in jail. And it was a deal made behind the backs of the victims. The law said that the police would have to tell the victims what was going on, I think, to get their agreement, and they did not. The man who was in charge of this, Alexander Acosta, I think he was like the DA in that state or something like that. He was then named to be the Secretary of Labor under Trump. So he was rewarded for helping Trump's buddy get off easy. Later, apparently, Acosta lost his position and ended up going to jail. I hope he was in the hardcore jail. And it just goes on. I mean, look at what is happening right now with Ghislaine Maxwell, or Ghislaine, or how are you saying it? Her name? I don't care. Maxi Pad. I'll call her Maxi Pad. What's happened? She had a secret meeting with Todd Blanche, who used to be Trump's personal attorney and is now in charge of some big to-do department of the government, or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. 9 hours. The tapes won't be released, and she was, in an unprecedented move for such a high-profile pedophile, moved to a minimum security prison. What do you say? Quid pro quo. And she also said Trump is innocent. He wasn't involved. But keep in mind, Maxi Pad perjured herself repeatedly during her own trial. That is a matter of record. She lied so many times. So, and of course, her lawyer, he lies and says, she's innocent, she didn't do anything, she was a victim too. Yeah, that's what you call a lawyer who is a corrupt officer of the court. Just like Alexander Acosta, just like Cannon and so many others. The fact that she made a statement that Trump is innocent and then was given basically a cakewalk prison to live in instead of the hardcore prison she was in where she was miserable just tells you how corrupt he is. There was a dark web site where they sold drugs. And the leader of the guy that ran this site, Ross Ulbricht, was finally sentenced to, he was finally caught. He was very clever, very clever. For a while, he sold like illegal arms, but he found that wasn't, that was too much effort or whatever. So he stopped. And there are lots of documentaries out there about him. You can go to Darknet Diaries by Jack Rhysider on YouTube, and there's an episode about the Silk Road. But he was finally caught, and in 2015, he was sentenced to life. Now, this was a man that part of the reason he got sentenced to life was on 2 separate occasions, he contacted assassins to kill partners of his. On the second occasion, the assassin, who was really a federal agent, both times they were federal agents, the assassin said, we can't do it right now. There are other people in the room. And Ross said, kill them too. I'll pay you extra. He didn't even know who they were. He just said, kill them. Could have been his own mom. He didn't know. So he was put in prison. Now, his mother is an important leader in the Libertarian Party, which is basically just another version of the Republican Party. And she lobbied heavily for Trump. And there was money that came from that party to support Trump. And Trump openly admitted that he was pardoning Ross because of their support. And there are people who have been convicted of other types of crimes, namely fraud, for many of them, who defrauded people of millions or even billions of dollars. And he pardoned Ross, and he pardoned all of these people too. And people are saying, oh, it's wonderful that Trump has changed the way the whole thing works for NFTs and cryptocurrency, but you guys don't understand how high risk and how many scams have happened. And that an NFT is not what you're looking at. It's the address to what you're looking at. You only own the address. You don't own what's at the other end. And it can be changed or taken away at any time. And you'll still own the address. You'll get nothing from it. So NFTs are garbage. So Trump has now reduced the regulation of that entire industry that is full of scams. And he has used his and Melania's meme coins to collect money from overseas, from people who are bribing him. He has forced the Qatari government to basically, it's a kind of a political pressure. Qatar is a very small country, and it probably exists partially due to the grace of the United States supporting it. So he went to them and said, hey, I want to have a great plane, and so that I can replace Air Force One, which is a great plane, but it's not good enough for him. And so the Qatari government is, they want to give it to him. The list goes on and on. I mean, and I know that if you're still listening and you're a Trump supporter, the chances are you're not going to listen to me. And you're going to continue to be a Trumpster until the scales are tipped. Or you may be one of those people who just does not care, like Trump. And you will never change. And you will be part of the downfall of this country. I certainly hope that nobody like that is listening to this, because it's a waste of the electricity. There are so many other things about what Trump has said and done. I mean, freeing all of the insurrectionists, some of which have then gone on to committing crimes, some of which have finally woken up, like the QAnon shaman, the crazy guy in the weird clothes that had his chest bared and had paint on his chest and stuff like that. He's now up in arms against Trump, and so are a bunch of other people. But Trump is instituting Project 2025. And as long as he stays on the side, the good side, that is, of the people who have actual power and money, he doesn't need Musk to be on his side. Musk's just one billionaire. He may be the richest billionaire, but put him together with all of the other billionaires and millionaires that are supporting Trump, he's nothing. Trump threw him away like that. Now, granted, Musk's time legally in the government as a special employee, in which he violated the rules for a special employee constantly, had run out. So He had to. He had to. But if you truly believe that Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Mike Johnson, the Congress, the Republican Congress, and some of the Democrats as well, and SCOTUS, the 6 traitors of SCOTUS, care about you as an individual, just wait and see. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse because now some of the states are now gerrymandering their voting districts again to make sure that fewer Democrats win and more Republicans win, or in the blue states where the Democrats are in charge, some of them are doing the same thing too. But here's the problem. If a lot of things don't change, and a lot of the rabid fascists in Congress don't get kicked out, America will have to change its name to the United States of Trump. And it will be a fascist nation. It will be a dictatorship. And depending on how things go, it may be a one religion nation with no God, because Christian nationalists have thrown away their morals to get what they want. The fanatics are violating the core tenets of Christianity to get what they want. They're all going to hell. They may not believe that. They may think they're protected because they believe in God and Jesus, but they're going to hell. I have no doubt about it. Well, I don't believe in hell and heaven. I believe in God. That's it. But in their belief system, they're going to hell. This has been very stressful for me. It has caused me a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. It's been a struggle just to want to continue to live because of what I see and how frustrating it is that I can't even get my sister to listen to me. And my friends, people I love. But people are easily manipulated. And I admit I make mistakes. I've been manipulated. Even this year, even this month, I've been manipulated. But it's one thing to be manipulated and to say, oh, I got tricked. Back off. I'm giving up whatever I lost. I wish I didn't have to give that up, but I'm giving it up because it's better to be free of that trick, that manipulation, that control, than to stick with it and put in more resources. Versus the people who are doing exactly that. Doubling down on their mistake. Tripling down, quadrupling down, continuing to put everything they have into it, even when they know in their hearts that they have screwed up. Maybe that's you. Maybe you know at some level that you were hoodwinked, bamboozled, tricked. Step back. Step out. You don't have to be a Democrat. Be a moderate like me. Be an independent. I don't trust the Democrats. Too many of them have done the wrong thing too. I mean, look at Chuck Schumer. He's a walking example of a bad Democrat. If you've stuck around this long, put a comment in there that says, Amen. Thanks for watching and have a good day.